Hey there, Justice 3 Strike Force. Welcome to your daily dose of Marvel Strike Force. And I promised you guys the other day that I'd give you a brief history on Toad. Mainly this video is for people, in gaming, there's always, and especially like in this game, there's always two different kinds of cultures that are playing. One, there are comic book fans like myself. I joined up because of that fact and being able to play some of my favorite heroes and villains. And on the other hand, you got your gamers who just love the gameplay, graphics, and just overall how the game is played. And a lot of the times, it's the gamer-oriented people who might not be familiar with some more sideline type characters like Toad. So that's why we are here today. But I do invite you into the comment section of this video because I am sure there's going to be more than one person that can actually either answer your questions or give you some more in-depth story about the character Toad, because I'm not going to be able to go through all of it. And trust me, Toad's gotten around and he has a lot more story to go around, and he's been involved in multiple different storylines, especially when the Brotherhood is involved, or Magneto in fact. So I'm going to talk about his powers a little bit because over time they actually evolved. So originally he didn't have any major superpowers. He did actually sort of look like a Toad, but he wasn't colored that way, but he was very much designed that way. He did have the ability to jump very far distances. Now, originally he also didn't have any real combat skills and would just kind of flop around wildly. Now he's actually pretty skilled in combat. I myself, being very familiar with multiple different martial arts, thought and still think that Toad would excel the martial arts of capoeira, which is a dance-like fighting style. And it would also separate him from other characters that use their agility in their combat, like Spider-Man. So where his tongue actually comes in, he actually gets experimented on. Now, in one part of the story I remember reading at one point, it was actually like Juggernaut's dad that was experimenting on him, but it was then another mad-type scientist that actually did it. The guy ended up getting retconned. Obviously, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know her name. Leave that down in the comments below, not for just me, but for everybody else. And actually develops his more prominent mutations, like his greener skin, his long prehensile tongue, and in some incarnations, pointy ears. Now, I believe they're always pointy ears, but you can't see them with this kind of haircut, and some of the other cartoons don't have it either. But usually it's skin color, tongue, and the fact that it actually stinks pretty bad. He can't shower because it actually messes with his body chemistry. So who knows? When we're talking about his tongue, it's actually super strong and can go super far. I think it's like well over 20 or 30 feet, and does have the ability to crush human bone instantaneously. Like in one storyline, he actually he's like involved in this Bloodsport type tournament. Kudos to anybody who has seen Bloodsport. Awesome movie. Recommend it if you're into action movies. But this is an area where he does run into Wolverine, fights him, obviously loses, but there is a character in there, sort of a, definitely a villain character called Eel. He actually wraps him up and crushes him instantaneously, which kind of bothers me a little bit, and comes up with an argument anytime he actually gets into a tussle with other X-Men like Cyclops. Now, he'll wrap his tongue around Cyclops' arm or his neck or something. Now, my argument is that Toad doesn't really want to hurt people. He's just a damaged person who's been bullied a lot, and so he's actually choosing not to harm characters like Cyclops. But you don't really get that feeling when you're reading it, honestly. It just looks like a fight to me. But for anybody that knows that, hey, there was that one time he crushed that person instantly, so there's no reason why he couldn't have done something like that in certain fights when he comes up against the X-Men. So like I was saying before, Toad gets confused about where he wants to be, and he gets bullied so much, and it hits him just like us all that have experience with bullying. Now, Toad actually at one point gets bullied so much and is rejected so much by villains and heroes alike that he actually thinks about taking his own life. He wants to commit suicide. And there is a hero that actually talks him out of it, and that was Spider-Man. And this is actually what comes up with the Misfit trait that they used in the game, which is, Spider-Man, another character named Frogman, and Spider-Kid actually band together for a group called the Misfits. But to go along with his tongue, he actually does have like an adhesive spit that he can actually put on people, stun them, quiet them. But more importantly, they never actually use this as part of his character profile in the game, but if you could see, he actually does have claws and his tongue has this. It's a venom, actually. It's got psychoactive chemicals where he can actually, in a very limited fashion, control people. So that would have been cool to see in the game, but it's powers like that, along with his other powers in the comic book, that quickly make him an overpowered character, which is the same. Same could be said for a lot of the characters in the Marvel Universe, but there's a certain equilibrium that you gotta have in game design. So adaptations are what they are. Moving on to his skin. His skin actually can secrete a kind of oil like a poison dart frog, but instead of killing people, he actually can paralyze them pretty bad. It can even come to the point where it can shut down major organs. Beyond all those other powers and abilities, he does have what I consider to be more ultra rare type of powers. Like he can actually increase the capacity of his lungs to the point where he can exhale so strongly he can knock over heavy characters like Wolverine or an entire group of people, which would have been cool to see in the game also. But again, you only got so much kit space to work with. Also, speaking of ultra rare, I would have liked to see this one. Now, after I run in with like the high evolutionary, he actually can set his tongue on fire. It's more like a green type fire or a chemical fire. I mean, if you ever had a campfire where maybe somebody threw in some plastic or even, let's say, cardboard with some colors in it, like a Pepsi, box or something like that, well, you'll get a different colored flame. And that's what I think is happening when he sets his tongue on fire. And how he actually does that, I have no idea, because it only happened like the one time. And last but not least, one of the ultra rare powers that Toad actually has, which is a psionic one, which is kind of like your telepathic or psychic linking, I'd say, with amphibians. Little Aquaman action. Kind of limited, and when it does happen, there's no real explaining it. It's like Toad just knows. Alright, so with that part out of the way, some more history behind his character. He was actually involved in some major events like Civil War and Avengers versus the X-Men. On a more personal note, he actually has a pretty big crush on Scarlet Witch, which actually does last a pretty good long time and leads to kind of a weird story where Magneto and him are actually kidnapped by another character called the Stranger. Very high tech, space alien kind of thing. And push comes to shove, Magneto actually leaves him behind. And this is where Toad's, genius comes in. He's actually a fairly highly intelligent individual when it comes to things like hacking, technology, machining parts, or putting something together. I mean, he is the kind of character where you could put him in the same room as another character like Forge, High Evolutionary, the Stranger, and he could pretty much build anything that they build, or at least figure out how to do it. His personality is what limits him in his ability to actually improve upon those things. Like his own character, he's trying to find a place where he belongs, and he's lacking that inspiration and creativity to do so. And that's where his character lives, sort of. Anything outside of that, of course, it can be an arcing thing, but it kind of would destroy his character a little bit. So, back to the story at hand with the Stranger, and it kind of ties into his crush for Scarlet Witch. For some, crazy reason, he actually uses all that technology that he gathers and builds from the Stranger, returns back to Earth as the Stranger, and gets into a confrontation with the Avengers. On a side note, when it comes to the High Evolutionary, he was a character that basically stripped the powers from, everyone on the entire planet, basically. But for a character like Toad, it actually had sort of like a weird side effect. He actually grew some certain powers, but at the same time, he reached a kind of hotness level, a Human Torch type hotness level. He was actually a good-looking guy. Now, in Avengers vs. X-Men, he does form a really deep relationship with another character called Husk, who's a really cool character and would be awesome if she could come into the game. That's another subject entirely. I mean, we could talk about Marvel heroes that we would love to see in the game all day, but the lowdown on her is that she is an X-Man. And if you're familiar with like shows with like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or even just the character, the Absorbing Man, he has the ability to touch things and actually create that material of himself. Now Husk has the very same ability, but she doesn't have to touch stuff. But she does kind of have to tear off her skin every time, which is kind of weird and a little gross. Hope you enjoyed your time with this character, and I think I'm going to do this on a regular basis with any new characters that come out, because I feel like when I play this game, the characters that come out, they have such a rich history with the comic book universe that when you play them in-game, it makes it that much more fun. So for you guys that don't know anything about Toad, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're brand new to the channel, don't forget to click subscribe. It's always on the right-hand side of the screen or down the link in the description below. And of course, ask questions. I'll try to answer them if I can for this character if you're interested in that, but I am more than sure that somebody here can definitely reply to your comment and give you a more in-depth detail about whatever information that you are curious about for the character Toad. Thank you so much for watching today, and don't forget to complete all those dailies so that way you can support your alliance, and I'll see you guys on the next one.